able to make it, or you wanting to watch it again later, if you missed something, please, you can go ahead and watch it on our YouTube channel later on. So second, I'd like to ask everyone to please mute your mics to minimize distractions to our speaker and for everyone else, right? Third, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat and we'll answer them during the Q&A portion of the presentation. And lastly, please stick around after the presentation as we transition into breakout rooms to do some networking, right? And as always, I'd like to put a disclaimer out there. Everything that is shared tonight, any information is for information only, okay? All right. So for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Gilbert Coloma. I am an active real estate investor, investing out there in the Midwest, all while working a W-2 job. Not gonna lie, it's not easy. It's challenging, but it is doable. I am also a WNN advisor, where we mentor and consult for people wanting to invest out of state, right? But yes, that's just a little bit about me. I am also the host, right? Co-host of Westside Meetup, as well as the in-person meetup, Real Estate at the Park, along with Brandon Robbie and Rod Baker here. That will be an in-person meetup that we also do. So a couple of announcements before I turn over the mic to Rod Baker here. If you aren't following us on Facebook yet, please give us a follow at our Facebook page, Westside Real Estate Meetup Group. Also, if you aren't following us on YouTube or aren't subscribing to our channel, please subscribe to our YouTube channel where we post these videos for everyone to review at a later time, right? Also, if you aren't on our email list, please put in the chat there that you want to be added to the email list. We'll gladly get you on there, right? So yeah, so with no further ado, I'd like to introduce our new co-host of Westside Meetup here, Mr. Rod Baker.
Thank you, Gilbert. For those of you that don't know me, hi, my name is Rod Baker. I am currently serving in the Hawaii Air National Guard. I am an out-of-state investor out in Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas myself. Actively looking for private money lending, but that could be later. But please allow me to introduce the person that we are going to interview today. So his name is Mike Cavaggioni. I think I said it correctly. Yes, sir. He is a 20-year vet, retired naval officer. He is also a licensed realtor with Realtor Associates, a financial coach, real estate investor, and the host of the Average Joe Finance podcast. So please allow me to welcome Mike Cavaggioni. The floor is all yours, buddy.
All right. Thank you so much. You want me to go ahead and share my screen now? Okay, cool. Everybody can see. All right. So, Rod, thank you so much for that introduction, and Gilbert for hosting, and WNN in general for hosting the Westside Meetup. It's always fantastic to be here and be a participant in them, and now being able to present to you guys. And I'm really excited to share some stuff with you. So what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to give you a short introduction about myself. We're going to talk about the importance of networking and how you can use a podcast to grow both your business and your network. I said it out of order there, but you guys get the drift. Okay, so short introduction of who is Mike Cavaggioni and Average Joe Finances. I'm glad you guys asked that. I'm going to tell you. Okay, so Rod gave a small snippet of who I am. Yes, I was in the Navy for 20 years. As a matter of fact, tomorrow is the day that I officially retire from the Navy. So right now you are talking to Lieutenant Mike Cavaggioni. Tomorrow I'm Mr. Mike Cavaggioni. So I'm super excited about that. But let me give you guys a little bit of background about me and why I even joined the Navy in the first place. Okay. So joining the military isn't just a decision that somebody makes on a whim. I grew up on Long Island, New York. Didn't have the best childhood growing up. And I'll give you guys a little bit of background into that. I was the only one of my siblings not born in New York. I was born in Florida. And the reason why I was born in Florida is because both of my parents were fugitives, because my dad was one of the biggest drug dealers on Long Island. So fun fact, if you guys didn't know that about me, I was not actually born in New York, but I was raised there. Moved to New York when I was, I guess, 3 years old, 3 or 4-ish, whenever my parents got extradited back up there. Lived in the Bronx for a little bit, and then we moved out to Long Island. But I spent my childhood visiting my family in and out of jail or prison, right? So the Navy was a very attractive option for me when I turned 18 years old and graduated high school. I was like, you know what? I'm getting the heck out of here. I got to do something, more with my life and not be involved with this side of what's going on with my family here. So I joined the Navy and said, I'm going to do at least 4 years. I'm going to use this to pay for my college, get my degree, and then get a good career, right? Because that's what everybody kind of pushes you to, right? Go to college, get your degree. But that wasn't really in the cards for me. Close to the end of my first enlistment, I married my wife, Jamie. We've been married for 16 years now. We have 2 kids, 13 and 11. And she kind of convinced me to stay in the Navy. So I did. Throughout my time in the Navy, I said, you know what? I want to do something where I can make, more of an impact outside of the military, but also do something that will benefit myself as well. I was always interested in real estate. And the reason why I was interested in real estate is because my uncle kind of put that bug in my ear when he, would tell me about his stories of him investing in real estate in upstate New York. He was also a state corrections officer. So he was somebody who I looked up to a lot when I was younger because of the fact that, here was a direct family member that was, clean and, not committing crimes and getting in trouble. And just a good person for me to look up to. And the fact that he invested in real estate always stuck in the back of my head. Fast forward to 2007, I was 22, turning 23, bought my first property in Waynesboro, Virginia, in the beautiful Shenandoah Valley. And I was a recruiter at the time for the Navy. And I bought it. It was 2007, July of 2007. So just keep that year in mind, right? I wound up not being able to sell that property when it was time for me to transfer back to Virginia Beach. So I wound up renting it out. I became an accidental landlord, and I was losing between $300 and $400 a month in negative cash flow. And I was like, man, this landlord thing is for the birds. That is not something I want to do. I wound up short selling the property a couple of years later for about $93,000 less than what I paid for it. It really stung. So I thought I lost my VA eligibility and that was it. Well, luckily for me, they didn't file the paperwork on time. So when we got orders to Hawaii, I told my wife, I said, you know what? We're going to buy another property and we're going to start investing in real estate again. I feel it. It's what I want to do. And it's what we did. So we came out here to Hawaii, bought our home. And I said, okay, now it's time to start looking. So we're looking back on the mainland. I find this duplex. I won't go into too much detail, but I'll tell you that we closed on it in February of 2020. Again, think of the dates. What happened the next month? The world effectively ended. And I said, okay, is someone telling me up there that real estate's not for me? Because that's the vibe I'm getting. So I said, you know what? I'm going to stick it out. We're going to make this happen. I had a tenant that couldn't pay rent. Thankfully, my downstairs tenant was Section 8 and it covered the mortgage and most of the expenses. So we were okay. I got my tenant set up with a loan repayment, rent repayment program. And we wound up cash flowing that property for $950 a month for the entire time that we had it. And I said, okay, this is what it's about. And that's when I got really excited. So we wound up with how busy I was in the Navy and not being able to travel because of COVID. We decided to sell that and get a little bit more passive while I was in the Navy, right? So we started looking into multifamily real estate. And I wound up selling that duplex and then taking that money and investing it with a partnership and I was a limited partner and got into my first real estate syndication. I've now done 2 more since then, and it's just been a really fun process to be a part of. So that's my real estate background. I started a podcast to kind of talk about what I'm doing. When I was talking about my story about getting out of debt, I was talking about when I started investing in real estate, and it really started to pick up. It wasn't something I expected to. I was like, who the heck wants to hear this guy talk? But apparently people were listening to my show. And as it was picking up the pace, things got really cool. I got to meet some really awesome people. I had people come on my show that I've kept in touch with, that I've done deals with, and it's just been an amazing experience. And that's what I want to share with you all today. So kind of a long story short, that's who I am, and how I got to where I am today. And my entire goal has always been to ensure that I'm giving back as much as I have taken, right? Because people have given me so much, and I want to return that to everyone else. So that's me, Mike Cavaggioni. Thank you. Okay, let's start off with a little bit of motivation here. Okay, effective networking isn't a result of luck. It requires hard work and persistence, by Lewis Howes. So this quote, it really stuck out to me, and I said, you know what? I need to have this as part of the presentation to start off and get you guys all motivated and ready to go. Okay, so it's not just networking, all right? There is power. And you see, I highlighted that word there. It's important. There is power in networking, okay? You can go from 0 to hero just by meeting the right person and having the right conversation. We all know that cliche saying that your network is your net worth. There's a reason why it's a cliche saying and why it gets overused, because it's true, right? People wouldn't say that all the time if it wasn't something that is actually factual, okay? So one of the things I want to talk to you guys about, though, that I feel is more important than just the networking piece is building an actual relationship with people, right? It's one thing to say that you're going to go out and network and meet a bunch of people and, oh, I have all these contacts. Well, that's great. But do you really know that person, right? So that's where one of the things we're going to talk about today. So networking in action. This is one of the things I'm talking about, okay? So what does that mean? This is that process of building that relationship. As you go out to these different events and you meet different people, you exchange information. That's step 1. Step 2 is you need to figure out who they really are. You know, if they're married, you know, know who their spouse is, know their spouse's name. If they have kids, know their kid's name. If they have something, an event going on, like their son, little Johnny, has a soccer tournament coming up and it's a really big deal, follow up with them and be like, hey, how did Johnny do in that tournament? How did things go? I'm telling you right now, if you're talking to somebody on that personal of a level, the impact that that makes, they will remember you, okay? So when they do have a deal that you might be interested in or something come up that's kind of in your wheelhouse, the first person they're going to think of isn't that, oh, yeah, I met a whole bunch of people that want to get into this at that networking event. No, it's, hey, you know, that Ellard guy that I met, you know, we really connected, you know, and he was interested in this. Let me give him a call. You know, he remembered what was going on with my kids and this and that. So stuff like that carries so much weight. And I really want to emphasize that. Okay. So what are we doing when we go to networking events? We are connecting with like-minded individuals, right? We're expanding our professional opportunities. We're gathering information for our particular field or niche, and we're broadening our perspective, okay? So like I said earlier, you don't want to just go to these events and just collect a bunch of business cards and collect a bunch of contacts. I mean, that's great. It's good to have that. But, you know, when you think about it, how many business cards do you guys have after you come from these events, and what do you do with them? Usually they probably go in a filing cabinet or they lay around somewhere in a drawer and you forget about them, right? So it's important that you make that impact that somebody remembers you, okay? Expanding your professional opportunities, right? So if you have something that you're good at, let people know. Go to these events, tell people what you're good at. And when other people tell you what they're good at, make sure you remember for the people that you might need. You're going to meet general contractors. You're going to meet real estate agents. You're going to meet people that need partnerships. You're going to meet people that have private money that might be able to help you on your next deal. Okay. So that's why it's important that you're always telling people what you're good at. Okay. gather information for what it is that you're trying to do. If you're new to real estate investing and you're going to one of these meetups and you're like, hey, I want to learn more about flipping, or I want to learn more about real estate syndications, find the people in that group, because I guarantee you there's all walks of life in there. Find the people in that group, latch onto them, and learn from them as much as you can. Okay. And I will tell you this too, be careful how you target the people that you want to target at networking events, right? There's going to be people there that just started. There's going to be people that have been doing this for 20 plus years. Okay. If you're going to go and try to get under someone's wing that's been doing this for 20 plus years, that's great. They can probably be a really good mentor for you, but probably wouldn't be the best person for you to maybe pick up a partnership with, right? When they started 20 years ago, real estate was a whole different ballgame than what it is today. The loan programs that were available were different. The lending terms were different, and the kind of deals that were available were different, right? There was no short-term rentals and things like that really happening 20 years ago. There was no Airbnb, right? We didn't know what that was. And so you have to put it into that perspective. So if you're brand new, my recommendation is find somebody that started last year or the year before, find out how they got into what they got into, and maybe, kind of go down that road with them. That might be a great potential partner in the future. Okay. Let's go on to the next one here. So one of the reasons we go to networking events is we're trying to build our team, right? You can do things solo and that's fine, but you will learn the hard way that working solo can be very difficult. I know some solo real estate investors, they do quite well for themselves, but they also cap out very early because there's only so much you could do on your own. So if you really want to scale, building a team is the way to do that. So yes, are there benefits to working solo? Absolutely. You don't have to worry about what everyone else is doing because you're everyone else. That's the con to it as well, right? Because you're doing everything. Now, working as a team, you're finding the right people. You're doing that through networking. You're learning how to properly outsource certain tasks. And I'll tell you, that was probably one of the hardest things for me to learn is how to properly outsource certain things. Okay. Now I have a wonderful VA that really takes care of me. I have a wonderful team that takes care of my podcast, and the people that I partner with and team up with for real estate, they're all fantastic people. And I met them through networking. Okay. Now, the nitty gritty. How can podcasting actually help me grow my network? I will tell you right now that if you start a podcast, you are opening yourself up to some outstanding and amazing opportunities, okay, for both you personally and the people that might actually be listening to your show and be impacted by the information that you're sharing. Okay. So we're talking about the power of podcasting when it comes to building your network. I'm going to tell you, you can build your knowledge base, you can build your network, like I said, but you can also build your business. One of the things that I didn't really talk about too much previously as we're talking about networking is this building your knowledge base piece. And I do want to touch on that. And I'm going to get to that here. Okay. So some of the things that we're looking at doing when you're a podcaster, or you're just, you have a show, you have guests coming on, or even if you don't have guests, right? You're just doing a show where you're talking about what you're doing and there's people listening. You're going to get feedback. People are going to reach out to you. They're going to ask you questions and say, hey, Mike, I listened to your episode about real estate syndications and you said A, B, C, or D. I'm really interested in that. I'd like to learn more. Boom. You just got a new contact right then and there that might have private capital that might be able to help you in something in the future, right? So one of the beautiful things about the podcasting is the people that you're going to reach out to and touch. Okay. The other thing is, if you do interviews, I tend to enjoy doing interviews for my podcasts. You get a bunch of people that are just absolutely amazing, wealth of knowledge, that come on your show and share their story and share what they're doing. Podcasting is very selfish on both ends, for both you as the podcast host and both the guest that comes on your show. And I'm going to explain why it's selfish, but why it's selfish in a good way. So for me as a podcast host, I get to bring on some people that are going to talk about things that I might not know too much about and I want to learn more. Where if they were coaching somebody, they might charge $1,000 an hour for that. I've actually had coaches on my show that charge $1,000 an hour, and I got to have them for an hour of their time on my podcast and ask them the questions that I wanted to ask them for my favorite price, which is free. Okay. So that's one of the selfish things I get to do as a podcast host is I get to ask the questions that I want to ask, and I get to do it at a very effective cost, which is free. Now, the other thing, what makes this selfish for the guest is if they're going on a podcast that gets a good amount of downloads and listens, they're getting free advertising, right? So they get to go out on this show, share their stories, share what they're doing, and all those thousands of people that listen to that podcast are listening to this particular person. And they might say, you know, I really like what this guest said, and I'm going to reach out to them. Because I'll tell you, every podcast you go on, and if you go on one that doesn't do this, they're not a good podcaster. But every podcast you go on, if you're a guest, they're going to give you a chance to plug yourself, to tell everybody what it is that you're offering, what you're sharing, right? I always do that at the end of my show. I'll always say, hey, where can people find you? You have a website, social media. If they're coming on to promote a book, hey, where can we find your book? Those are all very important things. So the guest gets that kind of that selfish side as well. Okay. Now the other thing, now going down to the next thing here, keeping in touch. One of the things that I really love to do is as I bring guests on my show, I collect that data, right? So I have that all go through a CRM system. I have them fill out an intake form. So I capture their email address, their phone numbers, and things like that. I keep in touch with every single guest that I've had on my show, because you never know when you're going to, get somebody that might be that next partner for you. So that's one of the things I've also been able to build my network just with podcast guests. Now I can tell you, I've done almost 200 interviews so far, and with different people. And I've been able to collect all that data with some really big powerhouses in the real estate industry. I mean, I've had Brandon Turner on my podcast, Henry Washington, George Abreu, right? So some people that are doing some really amazing things. And now I kind of have direct access to them, which is really cool. So that's one of the things that you also selfishly get as a podcast host, is you get some pretty powerful connections, right? Now, learning opportunities. This is the other piece, right? I kind of touched on this a little bit, but when I first started this off, I had just gotten into real estate investing, and I was still kind of learning what's going on. I had only done the one single family deal where I bought that duplex, and I was kind of like really, green behind the ears or wet behind the ears, whatever the saying is, right? I'm not that old. I'm only 38. Okay. But, I was like, there's a lot out there that I don't know. And I'm bringing these people on my show that are doing some really cool things that I'm not too sure I know too much about. So you know what? I'm going to ask them, to explain it to me like a fifth grader. And I kind of kept that theme throughout the entire thing of my podcast, right? Is, the reason why it's called Average Joe Finances is because we cater to the average Joe and the average Jane, right? Your typical blue collar person that is trying to get out of debt and invest in real estate or get themselves to a point where they could be financially free. So that is who I wanted to cater to, and I wanted to always keep it that way. So I said, you know what? This line of questioning makes it easy for me to learn, because even if I did know or I didn't know, the person who I have on the interview doesn't know that I don't know. I'm just saying, hey, explain it to me like a fifth grader. Okay. So that's one of the cool things as well, is I got to learn so much. I have a couple of these notebooks here. This is from a couple guests, you can see, where as I'm sitting here talking to these people, I'm writing down, I'm taking notes. I also transcribe my episodes, so I have the entire script, and I go back and I look at, some of the things that we talked about, and I've learned so much from that. I cannot tell you how much value that adds. Okay. All right. Now, if you are interested in starting a podcast and it's something that you think you want to do, I'm going to give you kind of the basics here, right? And on how to start one and how to use it to network and grow your business. Okay. The first thing you want to do is you want to build your podcast avatar. Who is your listener? Okay. The other thing is you want to understand how to use your podcast, how to network, which I talked about that before. And then we're going to talk about how you're going to grow your business with your podcast. Excuse me. Okay. So building your avatar. This is the biggest thing. Okay. Who's listening to your podcast? Okay. You want to build your avatar based on a couple factors, and there's some you can add or remove to this. Sometimes I add hobbies to this, right? But you typically want to look at the age range, profession, personality, goals, sometimes even gender, right? Depending on what your podcast is going to be about. I'm going to give you an example right here. So this is my avatar, right? So the average Joe Finances listener is somebody who's in their 30s. They have a blue collar job. They're working hard to pay off that consumer debt. You know, they have credit cards, loans, and all those things that are kind of holding them back, maybe student loans, right? Or they've already done that, and now they're trying to figure out how to save their money and what to do with that money. Their ultimate goal is to be financially free. So that right there, that is my target. This is who I am catering to with my podcast. Okay. Once you understand who your listener is and you can cater your podcast to that, that's what's going to increase your downloads. Okay. That's what's going to get people talking about your show to their friends, to their family, saying, hey, I feel like this guy gets me, right? Okay. So you want to get this right. You want to know, knowing your listeners is what's going to allow you to provide that better content. You're going to be able to give them more value. And this is also going to add value to you in your network and your business, because you're going to have these folks that really want to connect with you. I can tell you, I get messages on LinkedIn daily, all the time. Somebody saying, hey, I listened to the episode with so-and-so. That was really good. I'd like to know more about blah, blah, blah. So I'm a real estate agent, right? So I've gotten clients because of my podcast. Somebody that I knew that was moving to Hawaii reached out to me and said, hey man, I've been listening to your podcast. I live, in Virginia Beach right now, but I'm coming out to Hawaii. Can you help me buy a home? Sure can. I've had people that listen to my podcast that are having a little financial trouble, and they say, hey, Mike, I know you do financial coaching. Can you help me out? Sure can. So that's one of the things that it does is it helps me market the things that I do for my side hustles and my business. But it puts me out there, right? So the other benefit to this is when you bring these guests on your show, right? One of the things I like to do is I give them the full audio, the full video, the audiograms that I use, the social media caption videos that I use. I give them everything. And I say, hey, share this with your email list, share this on your social media. And what that does is that gives them another avenue to share my content, right? And gets me out there even more exposed to their audience. So the more that you're doing this, the longer that you start doing this, the bigger names that you start getting on your show, the more eyes and ears you're going to get on your podcast. And when you think about, if you're in a profession where you take on clients or you're looking for other investors for deals, this is the thing that's going to get you more results, right? Because one, you're going to make yourself a subject matter expert in that industry. People are going to want to talk to you, and people are going to want to know who you are and what you're doing. And then people are going to want to work with you. Okay. So it kind of makes you an authority in the space. Okay. So that is pretty much it for me. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. I would love to connect with any of you. You can actually scan that QR code. It'll bring you to my page where you can add me to your contacts. That is my personal one. So you will get my personal cell phone number and all my personal stuff. Or you could visit www.themikecav.com and you can get to all my links that way as well. I'm on social media everywhere pretty much as @Mike Cavaggioni. And yeah, this was a real blast. And if anybody wants any more detailed information about the podcasting, more than happy to chat with you offline or here. Doesn't matter to me. But guys, thank you so much for listening. Rod, thank you so much for hosting this, and Gil as well. You guys are awesome. WNN, you guys are all awesome. And I am truly humbled that you guys asked me to come speak to your audience today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mike, for, coming on and presenting a little bit about what you do. I do follow you. I ran into you and had a couple of in-person meetups out here on Oahu, and it's always been a pleasure talking to you, and you're just a wealth of knowledge. So, why not bring you on to West Side Meetup, right?
Hey, you were my lifesaver at one of them. You got me a charger, man. Like I was
Oh
running out
man.
of battery and I couldn't record content and you saved me.
Hey, we do what we gotta do, right? But we do have some questions here in the chat. I'll go one by one. Here's one from Blaze. Who was your favorite person you had on the show?
Oh, that's tough. Because I've had some really amazing people, but you know, I really like the energy. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of her, but Isabel Garano Smith. She was recently on Bigger Pockets, actually, but she was so enthusiastic, and she does what's it called? Assisted living, right? She does the assisted living homes. Wow. I never even thought of that as something that I'd be interested in. But after having the conversation with her, I was like, I'm debating like maybe getting into one of these because this is really cool. And just the passion that she had, it was just very motivating to me. So that was probably one of my favorites. And of course, Brandon Turner was a great one. That guy is just a mind-blowing wealth of knowledge. And he said things to me in that show that I'm just like, I'm going to keep these little clips and keep them on my computer somewhere forever because it's just that good. So yeah, those would probably be my top two favorite.
Nice, nice. Blaze does have one more. What is the best tip you got from a guest?
The best tip I got from a guest: learn how to properly outsource. Yeah, that was probably the best one. And it's one that saved me a lot of time and money in the long run that I was wasting in the beginning because I thought I could do everything by myself.
Sure. When you say outsource, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the podcast itself, I could tell you when I first started it, full-time active duty in the Navy, I was working some wicked hours because I was the executive officer over at Pac Fleet. I worked pretty late every day. And I started this podcast and I committed myself to doing one episode a week. I didn't realize how much work a podcast takes. And I was spending about 8 hours extra a week editing my shows. And then I realized I'm working all day, I'm coming home and I'm looking for deals. And then I'm editing my podcast and I ate dinner, but I didn't see my family all day. What am I doing?
Mm,
And after 6 months of that, I got really burnt out and I was actually getting ready to walk away when I had a guest give me that phenomenal advice of, why don't you just outsource your editing to someone else? And I said, you know what? I've been thinking about it. I just didn't want to spend the money on it. But I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I just started outsourcing it. And then funny enough, shortly after that, my podcast really started picking up steam. I monetized it. And then the money I made from the podcast paid for the editing. And it pays for my VA right now too. So that's the other thing I did too, was I got a VA about a year and a half ago. And she has actually changed my life as much as I changed her life. So that's been one of the best things. The best things that I've done to outsource was getting a VA.
all right. Great stuff. Great tips there, Mike. Appreciate that. Ellard has another question here. I think he's coming from the point of, being on a podcast. So what are any tips for guests? Yeah, I guess guests on podcasts. If
What do
we're
you mean?
wanting to be guests.
Like to find
Ellard, can
guests?
you Ellard, am I asking it correctly? Tips for guests on podcasts. I guess if we're wanting to be guests on podcasts, is how I understand it.
Yes, that's
Oh,
correct.
yeah, absolutely. Okay. So this is also something I do as well. I like to be a guest on as many podcasts as I can because that actually helps me grow my podcast. But to be a guest on a podcast, I highly recommend that you go and get a one sheet made. And that's basically like a one pager. It's got a picture of you on it. It's got your bio. And it's basically like, hey, here's the topics I like to talk about. Here's some questions that might be good to ask me. And if you send that to a podcast host, you just did 90% of their work for them. And they're like, yeah, I got to have this guy on. Right. So definitely go get a one sheet made. And then start reaching out to different podcasts, get their contact info. There are agencies out there that you could pay that will guarantee and get you on a certain amount of shows. I know about these agencies because they reach out to me daily with new guests. That's cool, but they're very expensive. And you can probably do it on your own for a little while as well. Or if you have a good VA, they can go and look up the podcast contact info. It's usually pretty public, and they could reach out and get you on there. But yeah, just get the email address for the podcast and reach out and say, hey, I'm interested in coming on your show. Here's my one sheet. Here's all the information about me. Be happy to chat. Most of the time, you're going to get a positive response.
Awesome. Did that answer your question there, Elder?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike.
No
Right
problem.
on. Nice. Next question here from brother Jay. He's out there on the Big Island, blessing us with his presence today. So he says he started an audio podcast on Anchor a couple years ago and picked up some traction, but stopped this year. So now he's looking to get started again, but wants to add video as well. So guess his question is, any starting tips, equipment, programs to get into it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have a really good free resource if you guys want to grab it. That is basically how to start a successful podcast, soup to nuts from the beginning. And I can share that with you guys. I could probably post it in the chat. It's with my podcast editing team. I actually own that business as well. So if you guys want, I could share that in the chat, but it's got like all the stuff, equipment, everything that you should look to do to start a successful podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for doing that for us, Mike. So we got Raven here. She goes, she's asking, how many podcasts do you batch in a day?
It's not so much that I bet. Are you talking about for me or my editing company? Or just like me personally, like my own podcast?
Yeah. Hi, Raven. Are you able to come on and ask Mike that question?
Yeah, sorry, it wasn't very clear. Yeah, I guess I should have asked, do you batch a bunch of podcasts in a day, like set up a bunch of interviews and then send that to your editing? And if so, like how many? Yeah, that's kind of a system. And how many do you kind of do in a day?
You know, that's a great question. Because when I first started, I'll tell you this too. I used to just have an open calendar and be like, hey, come on, let's go. And that got to be very painful. But it was mostly on the weekends because I was, working during the week. So it was very tough, so people couldn't really connect with me in the evenings. Now what I do is I have 2 set days a week, every other week that I do podcast interviews. So I do it on Mondays and Thursdays, and I only do 2 interviews a day. And I'm doing it this way, because I have found myself getting overwhelmed with guest interest. And this is something that will happen. Like as your podcast really gets out there, a lot of people and agencies will reach out to you trying to get people on your show. Okay. So one of the things that I had to learn to do was like really screen people and figure out like, hey, is this person a good fit or not? And I've had to turn several people away, which is unfortunate. I don't like doing it, but at the same time, I have to think about who my podcast avatar is, right? Is this something that would interest my listener? I don't want to lose listeners because I brought some random person on to talk about, how to sew an animal, stuffed toy together, right? That's not what my podcast is about. So yes, I do Mondays and Thursdays. I have a certain time frame where it's open. And one of the things, I use Calendly, and you can actually set parameters that, hey, once 2 of these are scheduled, no one else can schedule for that day. So that's the way I do it now. I was doing it every Monday and Thursday. But I was completely booking out. And then I realized, because I started going from 1 episode a week to 2 episodes a week to try to catch up. And I got to the point where I'm still doing 2 episodes a week, but I'm telling people, hey, thanks for coming on my show today. Your episode will be out in 5 months. Okay. And I got tired of telling people that they had to wait that long. So I want to keep about a 3-month window. So I want to have about 3 months of content at all time. So what I did is I actually took November and December off. I'm not doing any podcast interviews. I'm starting back up in January, and it's going to be every other week. And by the time I get there, I will have that 3-month gap that I wanted. And now pretty much every time I bring someone on, hey, your episode will be out in 3 months, and it's just set in stone. So yes, I do batch record, but I only do 2 episodes, 2 recordings on each day. And
Nice.
sorry if that was a long answer. I'm from New York. I'm long-winded. I could talk forever. So
No,
tell me to shut
thanks
up
so
whenever
much
you
for
need me to
that.
shut up.
That was above and beyond, but answered a few more questions I had. So thanks so much for that.
Awesome.
Nice. Raven does have another question. She asking, where did you find your editor?
Okay, yeah. So I actually hired an editing team. So I found folks on, I've used Fiverr before, I've used Upwork, and the quality hasn't always been the greatest. But when I found some good ones, I fully onboarded them and said, hey, congratulations, you guys are my editors, right? And then I actually started a team that helps other podcasters, and that's how I founded Edit Pods. So they do my podcast, and then they also do other people's podcasts as well. We do everything through a system called SPP, Service Provider Pro, where basically everybody that's has their podcast with us, they upload their content to the portal with the instructions of what they want. My team takes it, does what they got to do, and we turn it around in 5 to 7 days. And if you want, they will also post it on your podcast host, and they'll post the video to your YouTube channel if you want to do that, because we have a secure password system as well. So, but yeah, that's how I started it. And now I use them to help other people. I've actually recently had to onboard a few more editors because I had taken on more clients over the past couple months, and they were starting to get really bogged down. So we had to hire a couple more people.
Right on. Good stuff, Mike. I got a question here from Cedric. So he says, I know there's great personal satisfaction in doing your podcasting. Do you have direct income from doing the podcast, or does the podcasting grow your ROI/passive income from the resulting relationships, projects, and or education from doing the episodes?
That is a fantastic question. So yes, there are a couple different income sources from the podcast besides me getting clients as a financial coach or as a real estate agent. As a matter of fact, I don't even count that towards my podcast income. That's just kind of like a side benefit, right? So yes, I do. The podcast does make money. I do run ads on it. I do have sponsors, right? So they pay when I run ads. I do affiliate marketing as well on the podcast. So there's people that I've teamed up with, or products that I use myself that I will share on the podcast, and I share the affiliate link as well. So every time somebody gets one of those products and uses my link, I get paid. So that's pretty cool. But the other thing too is I do direct advertising. So I do have a page. I think it's averagejoefinances.com/advertising. And if you go there, it shows like, hey, you can sponsor an episode, or you could sponsor the whole month or a whole year's worth or whatever. And then for my sponsors, I put their logos up on my podcast page as well. So if you go down to the bottom, you could see like Wealth Tender, Deal Machine, Edit Pods. I use Edit Pods to sponsor my podcast as well. So those are a few of the sponsors that pay me directly. So those are pretty cool too.
Nice. Blaze is asking, do you guys, did they start doing shorts? I'm not sure what he's asking there.
Yes, no, I know exactly what he's talking about because we talked about this at one of the meetups. Yes, I am now putting some of my stuff up on YouTube Shorts, and that is actually taking off better than my TikTok and Instagram. So I guess YouTube Shorts is going to be the next big thing. I've actually, since I started posting on YouTube Shorts about, I guess maybe a month and a half ago or 2 months, whenever we started talking about it, I think is when I started doing it. And I've grown my subscriber base by about another 250 on YouTube, which is really cool. Some of the biggest growth I've seen to my channel since I started using YouTube Shorts. So definitely a really good thing. I think that's what he's talking
Awesome.
about. I mean, I'm wearing shorts right now. I don't know, but
But we'll be on the lookout for those shorts coming out soon, right, Mike?
Yeah, they're, I mean, they're up on the YouTube channel. If you go to
Oh,
the
they're
Average
up.
Joe
Okay.
Finance's YouTube channel, they're on there.
Gotcha. Nice. All right. So Johnny Morales here, he says, where do you look for more editors when you ramp up more work on edit pods or need more editors?
So
And do you train them to do the podcast a certain way, or do they already come with the knowledge of editing?
So
Couple
that is a great,
questions there.
that is a great question. So I actually don't look for them myself. I actually have somebody that manages it for me. He is US based. I will go, you know, full transparency here. My editors are in the Philippines, right? So I do outsource there, but the guy who actually hires all the editors, he is US based, and he's actually the one that will screen them and make sure that they have the right skill set. He does make sure, like, he gives them a couple practice ones to do and say, hey, go ahead and edit this. This is what we want to see. And he tests them out first. If they're good, we bring them on board. If they're not good, we say, hey, sorry, try again another time. But yeah, we do have a specific way that we try to edit things, but we also want to cater to what the podcaster's looking for. So we always say, hey, look, if there's something specific that you want to have removed or added or whatever, we just ask that you tell us, like, where in there, like, give us a timestamp, and we'll make sure whatever it is that you wanted in there, we can get it in there. But that's kind of how we do things. The Service Provider Pro portal is very easy to use, but we do have some clients that will they like to do stuff and just upload it to their Google Drive, and then they'll just post the Google Drive link in there. And when we open up the Google Drive link, it'll have instructions saying, hey, this is what we want for this episode. And we just go off that as well. So we can cater to what it is that that particular client is looking for.
Nice. Hey Rod, you got a question for Mike here?
Yes, I do. So so my question is, what are some of the character traits that would make a good podcast host?
You know, I don't think there's really anything that you could say would be like typical for a podcast host, right? I'll give you a really good example. Okay. I'm a huge extrovert. I love talking to people. I love doing stuff like this. I don't mind being on camera, but there are people out there that might be a little introverted and they're like, I'm not sure this is something I want to do. Well, let me tell you, one of the best podcast hosts of all time is a huge introvert. Go ask Brandon Turner and he'll tell you that he's a huge introvert. He does not like being surrounded by too many people or talking to too many people. It makes him uncomfortable, but he has learned how to cope with it and make himself comfortable, but he spends energy by doing that, right? So I don't think that you have to have a particular profile or a particular speaking style or anything like that. I think if you're just naturally who you are, right? The people that will like you will like you. The people that won't like you won't like you. It doesn't matter. So for me, I stopped caring about that at the very beginning, because I've gotten some, you know, people that have sent me like some garbage saying, you know, that oh, your podcast sucks, or I don't like this, or I don't like that. I'm like, well, okay, if you don't like it, don't listen to it anymore. Not my problem. I'm doing this for me and for the people that want to listen. I appreciate that, but everyone else, kick rocks. I don't care. I'm not doing this for anyone else but myself and the people that actually want to listen to this. That's who I want to cater to. So if it's not your flavor, go taste something else.
Nice. Thank you.
Awesome, everyone. Thanks again, Mike, for that great presentation and lots of good questions from the audience tonight. Really appreciate all the good questions, Q&As that we had here in this presentation here. Right now, I'd like to transition into, you know, our investor spotlight. So without any further ado, I'd like to, you know, introduce fellow WNN advisor, Elder Morales.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Gilbert, for that introduction. And of course, thank you, Mike, for hopping on and sharing your knowledge and experience. It was very helpful for myself, especially because I'm actually trying to do some podcasts next year. I'll send over my one sheet.
Sounds good.
I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'm going to try and keep this short. My name is Ellen Morales. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a father working full-time with the Hawaii Air National Guard, just like Rod and Blaze. Trying to retire here shortly through real estate investing and other business ventures. I bought my first investment property last year while I was in WN's mentorship program. Since then, I was able to build a diversified portfolio of single-family homes, short-term rentals, co-living properties, and commercial properties. I finished the mentorship program this year, and I became an advisor for WN. That way I can help others in their out-of-state investing journey. And right now I'm the I'm the facilitator for the group mentorship, and I'm also a member of Sub 2. I'm still actively investing. I have a few projects going on right now. One is a flip on Oahu. Another is a ground up going on the Big Island. And I'm also doing a parking lot out in Kansas City. That one we're getting through the permitting process, and I'm looking to get that performing by the beginning of next year, first quarter. I also have a commercial property, which I'm super excited for. It's an office space out in Kansas City as well, and the tenants are paying well below market rent. So that means it is a huge value add opportunity. We're going to be pulling our money within the first year. So it's basically a BRRRR on a commercial scale. I'm currently raising funds for those projects, actually. So if you want to put your money to work, I have a lot of opportunities for you. If you have any questions about anything I mentioned, feel free to reach out. You can reach me on Facebook and Instagram. I'll be posting that in the chat here shortly. And that's me in a nutshell. So I'm going to hand it back over to Gilbert. Thank you all for your time.
Nice. Thanks for that, Ellard. And thank you again, Mike, for coming on and presenting, and Ellard for being our investor spotlight for this evening.